You're listening to the Music Educator podcast with your host, Bill Stevens, the 21st century music educator man.
Podcasting from beautiful Leesburg, Virginia. Welcome to the Music Educator podcast, bringing you the latest tips, tricks, and practical advice you can use tomorrow. Here's your host and fellow music educator, Bill Stevens.
Welcome to the Music Educator Podcast. So excited that you're here. Again, if you're returning, welcome back. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. I'm really excited because we have a very special guest today. She is like family. In fact, she is family. She is my sister, Nicky Stevens, and she's going to talk to us how music educators can use libraries, archives, and museums to our benefit. Let's get started. Okay, so we have Nicky here. How you doing, Nicky?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am good. Good to see you. We don't get to see each other all the time, so this is a treat. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I have my undergraduate degree in film with a minor in history, and then I got my graduate degree in library and information science with a focus on archival studies. I'm currently an archivist at the Georgia Historical Society. Before that, I was an archivist that worked on corporate actions as well as educational and entertainment. And before that, I was a reference librarian at a public library.
Ooh, exciting. I love libraries, by the way.
I do too.
So today you're going to talk to us about the benefits of libraries and archives and museums to the music educator and just the music lover in general. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, of course. Libraries and archives and museums are wonderful parts of our community, and they teach us things and they show us things from modern times, what we know now, to things that happened thousands of years ago. And they teach us about cultures that we're familiar with and cultures that we're not familiar with from across the Atlantic and Pacific and all the oceans across the world. Yeah, they're really wonderful. First, I'd like to speak about libraries, which I have a deep connection to, and as you said,
Sounds good.
and I love, yes. So public libraries. Public libraries is probably what we're all most familiar with. They have lots of material that you can check out, like books and magazines, audiobooks and CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray discs, and they cover a large variety of topics, and that includes music. So if you're looking for biographies on musicians and composers, influential people in the music world, or professional training and career development, music appreciation, music history. For adults and children, it's a great place. Get yourself a library card and you can check out those things.
So I know a lot of people are on the go, and sometimes they have trouble getting to the library. Is there some kind of form, like some way someone could maybe check out a digital book or audiobook without actually even going to the library?
Oh, absolutely. The things that you can find on the shelves in a physical library are often available online. So they have ebooks, e-audiobooks, streaming videos, streaming audio, even digital magazines. If you have a library card, you can log on online on your library's website and you can gain access to that. And you check out these items just like you would something from a physical library.
Okay.
And they
I was just going to say, are there apps that you can actually check from your library? Or
yes, there are apps. I know the library I used to work at had Overdrive, but there are similar apps at other libraries, and that's where you could check out your books and your audiobooks and all sorts of things.
I know you've told me a few things in the past, and sometimes the library doesn't always have just the books and the audiobooks and everything. This is kind of going off the tangent a little bit. What is the most unique type of thing you've seen check-outable at a library?
Oh, that's a great question. Because most of us know about books and CDs and things like that, which are really awesome and I check out all the time. But there are libraries out there, public libraries out there, that have unique collections, which I think is really cool. For example, the Lopez Island Library in Washington provides instruments to check out. So you're like, oh, I want
Like
to
actual musical
like
instruments?
like actual instruments. Like,
Wow.
hey, let's check out a keyboard or a guitar, like sure. Not a
Oh,
problem. There's also the Ann Arbor District Library in Michigan, where I recently discovered that they have a long list of unusual things that you can check out. And that includes music tools. That's not just instruments. It's also, cables and amplifiers, microphones, and those distortion pedals you use when you're using a guitar, and just so many more things that you wouldn't expect to check out at a library, but are super useful if you're a musician or if you're an educator and you want your student to learn about everything that's involved with
oh, that
it.
would be super helpful. Now, I know this, we're trying to keep things focused with music, but what is the most just random thing you've seen a library check out?
Ooh, that's a good question. um, I haven't, most random thing, man, I haven't experienced this at my local libraries, but I've heard that you can check out like tools, which
Like backhoes and like shovels and things, or
yeah, like
really?
wrenches and anything you would use like to fix up your house or something like that.
Well,
Um,
that sounds pretty awesome.
yeah, you never know. You really never know.
Okay, all right, good to know. Let's move on. What else can you tell us?
Oh, what else can I tell you? Well, I can tell you because some people may be like, oh, hey, my library doesn't have that book or that magazine or that DVD, that documentary on insert famous musician here, Elvis Presley or whatever. There are ways to get your hands on things if you can't get it at your local library. You can talk to your librarian and they can get it for you from other branches within your county. And if you're lucky like me, you live in a state, Georgia, where they have a system. Here it's called the Pines system, where you can get stuff from libraries all over the state. So all you need is a library card and be like, hey, I want this particular thing on this particular thing. And they'll send it to you free of charge from across the state.
They'll ship it for free, or
Yes, they have they have a system where they go from library to library bringing
oh,
stuff.
okay. When they bring things to libraries, it's
Mhm.
they have a transit system for everything.
They have a transit system. Yeah, and it's
Okay.
free of charge. You just have to set your home library and then they'll let you know when they have it and then you'll go in and pick it up. I use that all the time.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And let's say that you don't have this statewide system or your county doesn't have what you want. There is interlibrary loan. And a lot of libraries have this where you're like, okay, I want this particular book about this particular topic, but I can't find it anywhere except in California, and I live in Maine or something. You can do interlibrary loan, which has a fee, but it's usually not very big, and you can get something from all the way across the state. Or sorry, not the state. You can get something all the way from across the country. Something else to check out when you're visiting your local library is the creative labs. More and more public libraries are creating spaces where people can indulge in their creative activities. And you might find like a 3D printer or sewing machines, but you also may find things related to music, such as audio recording software or recording studios, which sounds really fun, and it's a great way to get in there, record something for yourself, and kind of get that experience you may not be able to get elsewhere because it's either free of charge or it's a very small fee. It's really cool. I think it's a really awesome
Awesome.
idea. Yeah. You may also want to check out the programs and events at your public library. A lot of libraries have live performances, which are great experience for students and educators alike to experience these live performances and maybe actually participate in them. Often libraries have youth programs that have live music. Sometimes it's in conjunction with summer reading programs. There are also adult programs, which are really interesting because they'll have live music, but also lectures and information about the music. So they may talk about a certain kind of genre and the culture behind it, and then give you an example through a live performance. A lot of libraries also have performance series. You may find a series during the summer, or maybe it's a holiday series. I know at my library where I used to work, they every year they would have a Christmas program where there'd be a piano performance. It was really wonderful. And I recently read about a UK program called Get It Loud in Libraries, which invites emerging and established musicians to perform in public libraries. It's really cool. There's also programs and events revolving around music that aren't live performances. There's at the New York Public Library, there's a NYPL LP club, which is basically like a book club, except you talk about records and you talk about their cultural significance, and you meet bi-weekly. And I was reading that in the coming weeks, they're talking about Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. So you just never know what they're going to talk about.
Nice.
Going back to some online resources, I feel like I should mention the online databases that are available through your public library. These are maybe a little more intense that you can use for research, but they are wonderful resources. I also encourage you to look at your library's website, where they may have a list of ready resources. These may be a list of virtual resources available through your library, but also through outside institutions. I know my local library has a list of virtual programs, as well as arts and culture resources, online music and performance resources, education and enrichment, and so much more. That's where I discovered virtual field trips, which is really cool. They have the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra on there. They have a link to their website, and that's when I discovered that they have videos of performances and education programs. They have the ASO masterclass series with videos. You can learn about playing a drum roll, exploring a trombone, or just like general music tips, and it's really cool. I also discovered the Carnegie Hall Music Explorers, which provides lessons plans and resources that teaches about musical genres and the cultural traditions that are within that. It's all very cool. So even if your library doesn't have exactly what you're looking for within its walls or its online resources, it can lead you to really awesome, amazing resources that can be of great value to you and your students. So that's public libraries, the amazing world of public libraries. But we know there are other types of libraries, for example, school libraries, K through 12, as well as university libraries. And if you're working at a K through 12 school, I encourage you to speak to your school librarian. There may be resources within your school and within your library that you can use to support your music program. And if they don't have the resources you're looking for, they can help you find those resources. If you work at a university, I encourage you to reach out to your libraries or speak to your librarians and see what resources are available to you. Universities have some really awesome resources ranging from books to periodicals, sheet music, musical recordings, online collections, and databases. Many of them also have special collections of great historic value that are worth checking out. Even if you don't work for a university, I encourage you to see what is available to the public, because many university libraries are open to the public, just with some restrictions and maybe some fees. But the breadth and the depth of resources available at universities is often worth it. Other libraries worth considering are national libraries, and the Library of Congress is actually very close to you, Bill, in Washington, D.C. The Library of Congress acts as the National Library for the United States of America and has many resources available to the public. The Library of Congress offers a lot of concerts, and while a lot of these were available in person in the past, now they're available online, and you can find conversations and lectures and other educational materials. The Library of Congress also has tons of digital collections, and that includes music collections that can be found in the Performing Arts digital collections. Some of the cool ones that I found were the National Jukebox, which contains 10,000 historical recordings from between 1901 to 1925. These are recordings from music companies that are now owned by Sony. They're really cool, and they give you a great glimpse of what the music industry was like many, many years ago. I also found the Amazing Grace collection very interesting because you can compare how different performers performed Amazing Grace. You can listen to Elvis Presley or Johnny Cash, and the pipes and drums of military band and the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards. It's just incredibly interesting. And there's a great depth of collections beyond that, from the 10th to 16th century liturgical chants to African American band music and recordings. There's Dolly Parton and the roots of country music, or just conversations about music, and just so much more to discover. Another great thing that the Library of Congress has is projects, and sometimes these are related to music. One thing that I found was Citizen DJ. It's a really great program that's part of the Library of Congress labs, and it's a way to interact with their collections, old music collections, audio recordings from films, and you get to remix them, which is a great fun way to explore the different kind of music that the Library of Congress has in its collections. You can take old music from the early 20th century and remix it so you can make this great new beat. And it's just so fun and interactive. And I would encourage anybody to keep checking back and seeing these new fun types of creative projects that the Library of Congress offers. So those are the libraries that are definitely worth checking out. And just to wrap that up, I'd say if you have any questions or want something in your library that isn't there, speak to your librarian. They are open, they are there to help you, and they are there to support the community. So there's a plethora of ways to contact your librarian, whether it's phone or email, live chat, in person, or an online forum. They are happy to see you, so please talk to them. So now I'd like to talk about archives for a little bit. They're a little different than libraries. They have a lot of primary resources, which means they come from the source. They're from either the person that did whatever the thing is, or they're somebody who was there at the event. They also have secondary resources and archives, but what's really great about them is all the really cool historic material. So that could be like a drum from the Revolutionary War, or the guitar used by Prince, or the notes taken by Beethoven and his sheet music. It's really cool stuff. It's harder to view these things in person because of the rarity and the fragility of these things. Archives often have digital collections, and you can also request these things, though it is often for a fee. An example of a really awesome archives is the Beethoven House Digital Archives, which I believe is in Austria. And they have music manuscripts and written documents, music prints and photographs and objects and audio clipping. But it's a great place to check out and try to get an understanding of the music from the source. So it's really great. So I encourage you to check out archives if you're interested in that historical aspect. And just keep in mind that archives are often working in conjunction with libraries and museums, universities, governments, and nonprofit entities, or they are a part of those. Museums are really wonderful places. You can find modern day marvels at museums or things from the past. Museums focus on broad topics, or they may focus solely on a genre of music or a musician. Museums are a great place to have a field trip. It gives students and educators an opportunity to see materials and artifacts in person and kind of get that real feel, a real sense for that sort of stuff. Sometimes there are hands-on things, which is really awesome. There are also tours where a guide can explain significant events behind an exhibit and the stories involving them. However, it is not always feasible to go on a field trip. It may just be logistics or a budget or health concerns. A lot of museums have online collections where you can view visual and audio materials, and you can use them in your lessons. For example, the National Music Museum at the University of South Dakota has an online collection viewable through their e-museum, which is really cool. It has musical instruments that predate 1800s. And that's really cool because you can get a sense of the evolution of musical instruments and the differences between modern day instruments. If you're looking for something a little more modern, you might want to check out the Smithsonian collections on hip hop and rap, where they have the boombox that was used by Public Enemy, and that's really cool. Along with online collections, museums have online exhibits, which are really great, and sometimes they work in conjunction with the in-person exhibits. And the Smithsonian Museum is an outstanding example of this. So the Smithsonian National Museum of American History has the First Lady of Song, Ella Fitzgerald, at 100, which was an in-person exhibit somewhere in 2017, 2018. Now it's online, and it tells the story of Fitzgerald's work and life as a jazz artist, using documents and images from the Archive Center, as well as the Ella Fitzgerald estate. Another really cool National Museum of American History exhibit is the invention of the electric guitar. They use diagrams and audio samples just to tell you about electric guitars, from their invention and how they're designed, how they work, and even their commercial success. Many museums also have educator resources, which is really cool. And speaking of the Smithsonian again, they have the Smithsonian Learning Lab. And this is where students and teachers have access to millions of digital resources from the Smithsonian libraries and archives, museum and research centers, and more. You can research for individual resources, and you can also look for collections. Some of these collections also have lessons that other educators have also made. I was searching for Louis Armstrong, and I found the jazz resources for preschool students, which was very interesting. And, as we're looking for Dolly Parton, I found Critical Listening of Country Music, the Evolution of Popular Country Music. So you really don't know what you'll find already put together for you. But you can also create your own collection using the Smithsonian resources. Another thing worth mentioning is the Smithsonian Folkways Recording. This is a non-profit recording label of the Smithsonian Institution. They produce audio recordings, but they also provide lesson plans for educators. It's a really great resource. These lesson plans cover a diverse assortment of music and cultural heritage. Some examples are Australian Aboriginal music, folk music of Turkey, or the musics of Hawaii, and that's just to name a few. It's definitely something worth checking out. Those are just a few of the resources you can find at your libraries, archives, and museums. Keep in mind that collections and exhibits change and they grow, so check back frequently. And don't be afraid to explore. You'll find new possibilities and new exciting things.
That was very interesting. A lot of resources. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. And if people want to contact you, maybe they have questions about the libraries or, just different things in general. Is there a way they can contact you?
Of course, they can contact me via email. My email address is stevens.nicky@gmail.com. And they can even contact me on Twitter. My handle is @NickyNicole. That's NICKYNICHOLLE.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
That is all the time we have for today for Season 4, Episode 15. I want to thank you again for joining me for another episode of the Music Educator Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please feel free to leave a review and rate us on the Music Educator Podcast app, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcast aggregator. Also, check us out on our blog at bandbuzz.org, our podcast website, themusiceducatorpodcast.com, or our TPT or Boom Card stores. Thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you join us next time. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Music Educator Podcast. For the latest tips, tricks, and practical advice you can use tomorrow. You can subscribe to our podcast on every podcast aggregator or download the Music Educator app for free in the Apple or Google Play app stores. Furthermore, visit our blog at www.bandbuzz.org for additional music education resources. We will see you on the next episode of the Music Educator podcast. And remember, music can change the world.
It's like, I think that when you're younger, you think that like if you go to school and you get a master's degree, you're like super smart. But the truth is, the like cheesiness is ingrained with us, and we're gonna use terms like that. So.
Yeah.